Hi, this is DigitalCT Editor Rich Sampson, and welcome to another edition of DigitalCT Magazine. This is our Small Urban Transit Special Edition, and it really comes out of our second annual Sun Conference that we had in Denver this past August. And a lot of the content and materials we thought would be very helpful to the folks that couldn't attend, or even the folks who did attend who would like a little refresher on some of the materials. Not only that, but we wanted to kind of get into some of the more policy and legislative items that were discussed at the conference that really didn't come out in a document or PowerPoint. So that's kind of the intention and background behind this edition of DigitalCT. We have different aspects that I'd just like to spend a couple minutes sharing with you. First, we get started off with a podcast discussion with two of our Sun members who attended the conference on electric and battery-powered vehicles. Len from Antelope Valley Transit in Lancaster, California, and then Rich DeRock from Link Transit in Washington State. Both really kind of had a great long discussion on not only the trends but the background on how their systems went about deploying battery and electric powered vehicles and some of the very practical challenges that go about making these decisions. So hopefully this is a good resource for any systems properties that are looking at these types of vehicles. And as always, Len and Rich would be glad to kind of get in touch with anyone who's looking for a little more detailed information beyond the podcast. Then CTA Executive Director Scott Belgren chimes in with a couple of pieces on legislative and policy actions going on in DC that really impact small urban transit providers, particularly from the STIC program and how we're looking to speed up the increase dates for that program. The ongoing challenges with bus capital through the 5339 program, as well as safety regulations and procurement, all of which were discussed at length at the Sun Conference, and we want to provide a little more background on how those discussions came about and where they're headed and how CTA is going to help guide those efforts going forward. So take a good look at both those pieces. Daisy Wall from Route Match Software, who is our primary sponsor for the Sun Conference, also sent in a piece on how the transit industry can use advances in technology right now in particular to improve inclusivity, especially for people with disabilities and also kind of transit disadvantaged populations. Now, she argues, is kind of the key time to make giant leaps forward in customer service while also taking advantage of some of the efficiencies that the technology offers. So please do take a good look at that piece. And then coming out of the Sun Conference were a handful of presentations that we really thought would be valuable to share again with our audience, not just in PowerPoint form, but kind of fleshed out a little more in our magazine format. So first up is Mike Whitten from the Manchester Transit Authority in New Hampshire, and he talks about how their agency really was kind of stuck in a rut for a long time, not really expanding service, and very, very limited support, no state taxes in New Hampshire. So he discusses the kind of innovative ways they built partnerships, private sector or different nonprofits to expand service and all different kinds of opportunities that they've been engaged with in Manchester. So we'd encourage you to take a look at that. That's followed up by Julie Brown from Rogue Valley Transit District. And Julie shared a couple pieces with us in the past, and we thought we'd continue on that trend of how they won their most recent levy election back in May of this year, 2016, and kind of how that process went about after suffering a similar defeat on similar legislation in 2014. So Julie gives some really good step-by-step breakdowns on that process and kind of follows on our earlier article on building a transit political action committee. Recording this just a couple weeks before the election here, now's a good time to think about that, not so much for this coming year's elections, but of those to come. Continuing on, we take a look at the different ways that bus rapid transit has come together in Vancouver, Washington. Lots of opposition to previous transit projects in that region, especially those connecting Portland, but this is a story of how they got this bus rapid transit project done through C-Tran in Vancouver. So Scott Patterson spoke on this at the Sun Conference, and he follows up with a little more here. And finally, Tim Bates from Corvallis, Oregon, goes through the nuts and bolts of providing fare-free service which doesn't mean that there isn't a cost to it, in Corvallis, home of Oregon State University, and how the city's transit options fee, which actually comes across through their utility bills, really makes life a little easier for the system and also commuters and property owners that have a more stable and predictable source of investment in the system, and also provides fare free service. So that's a really innovative model that we thought some of you might be interested in. And then we kind of follow up with our ongoing series that we've instituted recently in DigitalCT Magazine, our member profile with Karen Walton, who's part of our membership leadership team of the Small Urban Network. She updates you on Green Mountain Transit and what they're working on up there. And then our how-to series comes from Arthur Gaudet, who's run transit systems in small urban areas all across the country. He attended likewise at the Sun Conference in Denver. And he kind of goes through some very specific details on how to improve efficiencies on what he calls low-hanging fruit, how routes are timed, when bathroom breaks occur, overtime, things like that. So it's really an interesting in-the-weeds perspective. So we invite you to take a look at all those pieces in this edition of DigitalCT Magazine, and stay tuned. This coming year we'll be traveling across Michigan on our annual state tour, and also look forward to our coverage of Expo 2017 in Detroit, Michigan. That will be rolling out very soon. So again, thank you for reading DigitalCT, and we look forward to hearing from you soon.